The story follows three friends, Nick, Jenna, and Marco, who decide to take a road trip across the country. They've been looking forward to it for months, hoping to find adventure on the open road. The first few days go smoothly. They laugh, play music, share stories, and take scenic detours through quiet forested highways, relishing the freedom. But things start to change when they decide to camp out one night in an isolated area of Idaho, known for its dense forests and winding, empty roads. They find a dirt road that seems like it'll lead to a perfect camping spot, a clearing they've read about online. The road is narrow and dark, with trees looming close on either side. Their headlights barely pierce the blackness, and cell service has long since disappeared. A thick fog settles in, and even though Nick, who's driving, jokes about it being like a horror movie, the tension is already starting to creep in. They eventually reach the clearing and set up camp, but they all feel uneasy, as if the forest is watching them. That night, they hear strange noises. It starts as a low rustling in the trees and then something heavier, like footsteps. They joke nervously, chalking it up to deer or raccoons. But as they try to fall asleep, Jenna swears she hears whispers, faint, indistinct, like someone calling her name. Marco tries to brush it off, but the strange noises and whispers continue throughout the night. The next morning, feeling exhausted and unnerved, they decide to pack up early and continue on their way. A few hours into their drive, they realize the GPS is acting strangely, showing that they're in a completely different state than they actually are. It reroutes them back onto another dirt road, different from the one they took to the clearing. The road is even narrower and looks barely used, with branches scratching against the car as they move forward. At first, they laugh it off, saying they'll end up with a great story to tell. But the laughter fades when they pass a broken-down van that looks abandoned. As they drive by, they catch a glimpse of something written on the van's side. "Leave now," in large, smeared letters. The sight chills them to the core. They keep going, but the road only gets rougher. Jenna spots strange symbols carved into trees along the way. Circles, triangles, spirals. Marco suggests they turn back, but the GPS insists this is the only route out. They pass another abandoned car, this one turned over with broken windows, and Nick speeds up, suddenly desperate to leave the forest. As they drive, they start to feel as if they're being followed. Every time they glance in the rearview mirror, they think they see shadows darting between the trees, too quick to be animals, too silent to be human. Just as they think they might finally be nearing the main road, they spot a man standing in the middle of the path ahead, blocking their way. He's tall, with his back to them, dressed in ragged clothes. Nick honks, hoping the man will move, but he doesn't budge. Instead, he slowly turns his head, revealing a pale face with eyes that don't seem to have any whites, just dark, empty sockets. In a panic, Nick tries to reverse, but they feel the car shudder as if it's hit something. They turn to look and see another figure standing behind them, identical to the first. Trapped, they can do nothing but sit in horror as the two figures slowly advance on the car, their faces twisted into wide, unnatural smiles. Jenna screams as one of them raises a hand and scratches something into the hood of the car with what looks like a claw. The figures step back, allowing them just enough space to maneuver. Shaking, Nick slams the gas and veers around them, desperately racing down the road. Finally, they burst out onto a paved road, the sun blinding as they escape the forest. They drive for miles in silence, too terrified to speak. When they finally stop, they get out to inspect the car. There, etched into the hood, are the words, "This road never ends." Weeks later, each of them finds themselves haunted by strange dreams, always set on a twisting, foggy road with shadowy figures lurking among the trees. It takes them days to realize something is wrong, that no matter where they go, they keep ending up back at the same road, the same clearing, the same abandoned cars. It's as if they've been cursed, doomed to forever wander that forgotten path, a road they can never truly leave. And every time they think they've finally escaped, they wake up realizing they're still trapped in the nightmare, a prisoner of the forest that never lets go. Three college friends, Ben, Ava, and Liam, set out on a cross-country road trip to celebrate their graduation. It's a beautiful summer night, and they're full of excitement, planning to take the scenic route through some remote highways to avoid heavy traffic. They joke about ghost stories and urban legends, but the mood begins to shift as they make their way deeper into the mountains. The road grows narrower, winding and lonely, with no cars in sight. Just as they begin to feel the unease creeping in, they spot an old, decrepit gas station, the only sign of life for miles. The gas station looks barely operational, with one flickering light above the pumps and a broken, peeling sign. Ben gets out to pump gas, while Ava and Liam head inside to grab snacks. The station is empty, except for an old man sitting behind the counter, his face partially hidden in the shadows. He's watching an ancient, static-filled TV that displays nothing but a test pattern, a single line of color splitting the screen. When they approach, the man doesn't acknowledge them at first, his eyes fixed on the screen. Ava clears her throat and politely asks if they have a bathroom. The man slowly turns his head, his gaze unsettlingly blank. His voice is low and raspy as he mutters, "Bathroom's around back. But you don't want to go out there, night like this." Liam tries to brush it off, chuckling nervously, but Ava hesitates. There's something deeply unsettling about the man's tone and the way he stares past them as if he can see something they can't. Still, they leave the station, brushing off the strange encounter. Ava decides not to risk the bath or all. Once they're back on the road, Ben jokes about the gas station, calling the old man a classic creepy movie character. But Ava and Liam can't shake the feeling that something's off. A thick fog rolls in as they drive through the winding mountain roads, so dense that even their high beams barely cut through it. The GPS begins acting up, sending them in circles, insisting on random turns that lead them back to the same unmarked road. After almost an hour of aimless driving, they find themselves at a fork in the road. Just as they're about to decide which path to take, they see a figure in the fog up ahead. A woman standing still in the middle of the road, staring at them. Her face is obscured, but her silhouette is strange and distorted, as if her limbs are too long and bent at odd angles. They stop, unsure of what to do. Ava rolls down the window and calls out, asking if she needs help. The woman doesn't respond. She just stands there, unmoving. Ben finally decides to drive around her, creeping forward cautiously. But as they pass her, her head turns sharply, following them, her dark eyes locked onto the car. The look on her face is one of sheer hatred. They speed up, their nerves shot, hearts pounding, desperate to put distance between themselves and that strange figure. Yet the further they drive, the fog seems to thicken, and they begin to pass landmarks they swear they've already seen. The feeling of being watched intensifies, and every so often, Ava catches a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror. A figure, always too far to see clearly, but unmistakably there. Hours pass, and they're still lost, driving in endless circles. Then, without warning, they see lights up ahead and breathe a sigh of relief. They pull into what looks like another gas station, a more modern one this time, brightly lit and bustling with a few travelers. They get out, eager to ask for directions, when they realize something chilling. This is the same gas station. The same broken sign, the same flickering light. And sitting behind the counter, watching the same static-filled TV, is the same old man. Panicking, they run back to the car, but it won't start. The engine whines and sputters, but it won't turn over. Ava looks up and screams, because standing at the edge of the gas station's parking lot, half shrouded in fog, is the same twisted figure they saw on the road. Only now she's closer, her face visible under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her skin is pale and drawn tight over her skull, eyes hollow and fixed on them with a look of bitter resentment. Her mouth opens as if to scream, but no sound comes out. They run into the gas station, shouting at the old man to help them. He only smiles a thin, knowing smile, never taking his eyes off the static screen. "You came here," he says softly, "and now you'll never leave." In a desperate attempt to escape, they race back to the car, somehow getting the engine to sputter to life. They speed away from the gas station, but it's as if they're driving in place. The fog stretches endlessly, and the trees blur together, warping in unnatural ways. Time becomes meaningless as they drive and drive, hearts racing, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. Each time they look, the figure is there, closer and closer. Finally, their car sputters out of gas. They're forced to stop in the middle of the road, stranded in the impenetrable fog. The figure steps out of the shadows, advancing toward them slowly. This time they can hear her whispering, a low, hoarse voice repeating the same words over and over. You came here, you can't leave. They try to run, but there's nowhere to go. The fog closes in around them, the whispering growing louder, drowning out their screams. And as the night stretches on, the only sign of them that remains is their abandoned car, headlights still on, slowly dimming in the dark, empty road where no one ever passes. The next morning, a state trooper finds the car, but it's empty. No signs of Ben, Ava, or Liam. And as he marks it down as yet another strange disappearance, he glances back down the road where the fog clings to the asphalt like a living thing, whispering and watching, waiting for the next travelers to stumble into its grip. Two lifelong friends, Maya and Jake, set out on a week-long road trip to explore the abandoned ghost towns dotting the desert. They had read about several places where the towns were long since forgotten, and their empty buildings held remnants of the lives once lived there. They hoped for a spooky adventure, but were completely unprepared for the terror that awaited them. On the third day, they veered off the main highway onto a narrow dirt road leading to a town called Red Hollow. The town wasn't on any maps they had found online, which only piqued their interest more. The road was rough and winding, flanked by desolate stretches that seemed to absorb all sound. As they drove deeper, they noticed strange signs nailed to the occasional fence post. Each sign read, in red letters, "Turn back now." Jake laughed nervously, insisting it was a prank, probably some attempt to make the town seem scarier than it was. But Maya couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her gut, a warning she couldn't explain. When they finally arrived, Red Hollow looked as abandoned as they'd imagined. Empty, crumbling buildings, dust-covered windows, and streets blanketed in silence. But something felt wrong. There was a suffocating heaviness to the air, like the town was watching them, waiting for them to make a wrong move. They parked by what used to be a general store. As they stepped out, a faint smell hit them, a mix of decaying wood and something foul like rotting meat. Jake shrugged it off, eager to explore, but Maya felt her stomach turn. They walked down the main street, taking pictures and commenting on the eeriness. But as they moved deeper into the town, Maya began to hear whispers, soft and indistinct, as if someone were murmuring just out of sight. She looked around, trying to locate the source, but saw nothing. Jake joked that the ghosts were trying to scare her, but his laughter sounded hollow, and his eyes betrayed his own discomfort. As they continued, they found a house with its door ajar and decided to go inside. It was small, with broken furniture and dusty relics scattered around. Faded photos of people from a bygone era lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow the pair as they moved through the house. In one of the rooms, they found an old diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. Jake flipped through it, stopping when he found an entry dated from the late 1800s. It read, "They come at night. First you hear the whispers, then the knocking. They say you can't leave once you've heard them. I don't know if it's true, but I fear we're trapped here forever." They exchanged a nervous look, but Jake brushed it off, saying it was just old folklore. Maya, however, felt an icy chill creeping over her. When they exited the house, the sun was sinking below the horizon, casting long shadows across the empty town. As they headed back to their car, they noticed something strange. The dirt road they had driven in on was gone, replaced by an unbroken stretch of desert. They looked around, utterly confused. There was no way they'd missed the road. It had been right there. Anxiety turned to dread as they started walking back through the town, hoping to find another way out. But as they walked, they kept passing the same buildings again and again, as if the town were rearranging itself, trapping them in a looping maze. The whispers grew louder now, a disembodied chorus echoing around them. Then came the knocking. It started softly, a single knock from behind them. They whipped around, but saw nothing. Another knock sounded, this time from the shadows near the old saloon. Then another, closer, from somewhere unseen. Panic set in as the knocking grew louder, coming from every direction, surrounding them. Maya clutched Jake's arm, her voice trembling as she begged him to do something, anything to get them out. He tried to reassure her, but the fear in his own voice was unmistakable. They began running, desperate to escape, but no matter where they turned, they kept ending up back in the same spot, the front of the general store where they'd first parked. Exhausted and terrified, they huddled together, backs against the car. The whispers had become screams now, angry, accusing, filling the empty air with rage. Shadows began to form, vague shapes emerging from the corners of the buildings, their outlines flickering like firelight. They moved closer, slow and deliberate, their faces hidden in the darkness. In the chaos, Maya's phone started buzzing, lighting up with a text from an unknown number. She looked down, and her heart stopped. The message simply read, "You can't leave." They both tried their phones, desperately dialing for help, but no signal came through. The shadows crept closer, the air growing colder with each step they took. Just as one of the figures reached out, its hand inches from Maya's face, everything went dark. When they opened their eyes, it was morning. They found themselves sitting in the middle of an empty road, the town nowhere in sight. Their car was parked a few feet away, undamaged and ready to go. They stumbled to their feet, checking each other to make sure it wasn't some twisted dream. But Maya's phone still had the message from the unknown number, and when she checked the photos they'd taken, all of them were gone, all except one. The last photo was of them, standing outside the general store with several shadowy figures looming behind them, faces pale and twisted with malice. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive home. They couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, waiting. And from that day forward, both of them were plagued by the same nightmare, a silent town where shadows waited in the dark, whispering and knocking, calling them back.